speaker. I do not have his introduction from the side. The one thing that I can tell you is that he breathed Toastmaster organization. This individual is so passionate about helping others progress in their careers, learn more about public speaking, really fostering in each one of us that leadership quality. How can we better ourselves? A lot of time that he puts into this organization to help others, and we really appreciate this. For this speech, Rex is doing one of the specialty speeches, read it out loud. Read out loud. Please help me welcome Rex Zerul.
Life's blows cannot break a person whose spirit is warmed by his fire of enthusiasm. Norman Vincent Peale. Today I want to take you on a journey, and let this be a personal journey, even though I'm going to read out loud from one of the most interesting persons in the history that I have a special liking for. Before I started this, your Vice President PR made a joke whether I brought War and Peace over here. But trust me, this is nothing less than one such tome that you're going to look at. And the person that is going to be the hero for this presentation is none other than Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. He was the first Prime Minister of independent India. He is an extremely astute freedom fighter and a scholarly person. And if I tell you under what circumstances he wrote not just this book, but 2 other books, then you will start to develop a keener liking to this man behind this book. As I said, think of yourself. Let's say, under whatever circumstances, you were arrested and you were put in one of the most disciplinary prisons, where you are literally cut off from the rest of the world, no air conditioning, and no library, no references, and literally the aim is to crush your soul. What would you do? That's exactly what happened to Pandit Nehru. He literally started writing these letters to his only daughter, Indira Gandhi. What you're seeing here, the glimpses of the world history, is literally a compendium of 200 letters that he wrote over a period of 2.5 years, all under incarceration, where he did not have the luxury of library or the reference books, to a point where he even laments that the letters have grown. There was little of planning about them, and I never thought that they would grow to such huge dimensions. Nearly 6 years ago, when my daughter was 10 years old, I wrote a number of letters to her containing a brief and simple account of the early days of the world. You might be wondering why he would have took a daunting exercise such as this. For the simple reason, because he was a father. And he wanted to be there for his daughter. And he says, there are no libraries or reference books at the command of the prisoner. And under these conditions, to write on any subject, and especially history, is a foolhardy undertaking. A number of books came to me, but they could not be kept. They came and went. 12 years ago, however, when in common with large numbers of my countrymen and countrywomen, I started my pilgrimages to prison. Pay attention to the words he is using very carefully. Pilgrimages to prison. Because he did not take that. You will not see an ounce of hatred in how he started fighting. A valiant man. For today's exercise, I'm going to read his very first letter, which is really soul nourishing. Because he was writing this letter for his daughter's birthday. And here he was in the prison, at the most tightly controlled central prison in Naini, in Allahabad, in the most populous state of India, Uttar Pradesh. And he laments, you can see his mood swings as I read through. And this is the letter he wrote. On your birthday, you have seen in the habit of receiving presents and good wishes. Good wishes you will still have in full measure. But what present can I send you from any prison? My presents cannot be very material or solid. They can only be of the air and of the mind and spirit, such as a good fairy might have bestowed on you. Things that even the high walls of prison cannot stop. You know, sweetheart, how I dislike sermonizing and doling out good advice. When I am tempted to do this, I always think of the story of a very wise man I once read. Perhaps one day you will yourself read the book which contains the story. 1300 years ago, there came a great traveler from China to India in search of wisdom and knowledge. His name was Sun San. And over the deserts and mountains of the north he came, braving many dangers, facing and overcoming many obstacles. So great was his thirst of knowledge. And he spent many years in India, learning himself and teaching others at the great university of Nalanda, which existed then near the city that used to be called Pataliputra, which is now known as Patna. Hun Sang became very learned himself, and he was given the title of Master of the Law of Buddha. And he journeyed all over India and studied the people that lived in this great country in those far off days. Later he wrote a book of his travels, and it is this book from which contains the story that comes to my mind. Pay attention. He is actually using even a storytelling opportunity to tell the history behind what he is about to tell his daughter. He came to a city near modern Bhagalpur in Bihar, and it was written round his waist he had his copper plates, and on his head he carried a lighted torch. Staff in hand, with proud bearing and lofty steps, he wandered about in his strange attire. And when anyone asked him the reason for his curious get-up, he told them that his wisdom was so great that he was afraid his belly would burst if he did not wear copper plates around it. And because he was moved with pity for the ignorant people around him who lived in darkness, he carried the light in his head. Well, I am quite sure that there is no danger of my ever bursting with too much of wisdom, so there is no need for me to wear copper plates or armor. And in any event, I hope that my wisdom, such of it as I possess, does not live in my belly. Wherever it may reside, there is plenty of room still for more of it, and there is no chance of there being no room left. If I am so limited in wisdom, how can I pose as a wise man and distribute good advice to others? And so I have always thought that the best way to find out what is right and what is not right, what should be done and what should not be done, is not by giving a sermon, but by talking and discussing. And out of the discussion, sometimes a little bit of the truth comes out. I have liked my talks with you, and we have discussed many things. but the world is wide. And beyond our world lie another wonderful and mysterious worlds. So none of us need ever be bored or imagine like the very foolish and conceited person whose story Hyun Sang has told us, that we have learned everything worth learning and become very wise. And perhaps it is as well that we do not become very wise. For the very wise, if any such there are, much sometimes feel rather sad that there is nothing more to learn. Here compare and contrast to exactly what Socrates used to say. He used to say that I am intelligent not because I know everything, but I know that I don't know everything. It's also a key tenet of the Zen Buddhism. As long as I keep my container empty, I can have some of you to pour something that I can take from it. And perhaps it is as well that we do not become very wise, for the very wise, if any such there are, much sometimes feel rather sad that there is nothing more to learn. They must miss the joy of discovery, of learning little things, new things, the great adventure that all of us who care of to may have. I must not therefore sermonize, but what am I to do then? A letter can hardly take the place of a talk. At best, it's a one-sided affair. So if I say anything that sounds like good advice, do not take it as if it were a bad pill to swallow. Imagine that I have made a suggestion to you for you to think over, as if we were really having a talk. Remember again, he's writing this from the prison. In history, we read of great periods in the life of nations, of great men and women, and great deeds performed. And sometimes in our dreams and reveries, we imagine ourselves back in those times, doing brave deeds like the heroes and heroines of the old. Do you remember how fascinated you were when you first read the story of Joan of Arc, and how your ambition was to be something like her? Ordinary men and women are not usually heroic. They think of their daily bread and butter, of their children, of their household worries, and the like. But a time comes when a whole people become full of faith for a greater cause, and then even simple, ordinary men and women become heroes. And history becomes stirring and epoch-making. Great leaders have something in them. Great leaders have something in them which inspires a whole people and make them do great deeds. And he goes on to recollect a few of the historical incidents which I would bypass. And he talks about, and today in India, another great leader, also full of love for all who suffer and passionately eager to help them, has inspired our people to great endeavor and noble sacrifice, so that they may be free. And the starving and the poor and the oppressed may have of his message. Steals into the hearts of India's millions, and men and women, even little children, come out of their little shells and become India's soldiers of freedom. In India today, we are making history. And you and I are fortunate to see this happening before our eyes and to take some part ourselves in this great drama. Towards this portion of the letter, he gives some beautiful advice that I would request the audience to pay much more attention. Because this is not, he is writing to just a 13-year-old daughter. He's talking to you and me, parents, managers, leaders, whoever you are. How shall we bear ourselves in this great moment? What part shall we play in it? I cannot say what part will fall to our lot, But whatever it may be, let us remember that we can do nothing which may bring discredit to our cause or dishonor to our people. If we are to be India's soldiers, we have India's honor in our keeping, and that honor is a sacred trust. Honor is a sacred trust. Often we may be in doubt as to what to do. It is no easy matter to decide what is right and what is not. One little task and one little test I shall ask you to apply whenever you are in doubt. It may help you. Never do anything in secret or anything you would wish to hide. Ladies and gentlemen, ethics is all about that. If you're one of those to just run after optics, question yourself. Never do anything in secret or anything that you would wish to hide. For the desire to hide anything means that you are afraid, and fear is a bad thing unworthy of you. Be brave. All the rest follows. If you are brave and you will not fear, and you will not do anything of which you are ashamed, that is the call of a leader. We have nothing to afraid. We have nothing to be hiding. We work in the sun and in the light. Even so, in our private lives, let us make friends with the sun and work in the light and do nothing secretively or furtively. Privacy, of course, we may have and should have, but that is a very different thing than secrecy. And if you so, my dear, you will grow up child of the light, unafraid and serene and unruffled, whatever may happen. I have written a very long letter to you, and yet there is so much I would like to tell you. But how can a letter contain it? You are fortunate, I've said, in being a witness to this great struggle for freedom that is going in our country. You are very fortunate in having a very brave and wonderful little woman for your mommy. And if you are ever in doubt or in trouble, you cannot have a better friend. Goodbye, little one. And may you grow up into a brave soldier with all my love and good wishes.
Wow. Great speech. We could not expect anything less. That was very touching. Our next speaker, she has been